Warm greetings to you. Welcome to attend this virtual training course on digital ethnography. This is offered by International Institute of Anthropological Applications, which is an institute created by Anthropological Association for Humankind. So this organization has created this virtual platform called the International Institute of Anthropological Applications. So the main target of this institute is to train the students, scholars, and the faculty members and practitioners in applying the knowledge that we get through anthropological investigations and ethnographic endeavors. And whatever the theories, whatever the concepts, whatever the frameworks developed during the long years of ethnographic efforts, how these theories and knowledge and skills can be applied to improve human condition, to mitigate risk, and also to address the contemporary issues. So that is the target. So digital ethnography during this pandemic time is a irreducible minimum. If we train our students and scholars and the practitioners and the faculty in digital ethnography, what does it mean, and what are the implications, and how to do it, and what are the field studies are telling us, what are the different experiences that we need to listen. So that's why digital ethnography learning and research group is created on this virtual platform called International Institute of Anthropological Applications, so that this ongoing learning at the same time or researching, and both can go hand in hand as we equip our participants to acquire the skills to do meaningful, productive, and the ethnographies, digital ethnographies to do on the digital field sites. So that is the motivation why we offer this course, digital ethnography. So this group we have termed it as a digital ethnography learning and research group. So we also have created this WhatsApp group where around 50 participants have registered, and some of them they listen to the video recordings and getting acquainted with the concepts and the methods of the digital ethnography. And we hope this course will generate some momentum and interest and practical utility for the advancement of the anthropological knowledge and ethnographic fieldwork, and also generate some new theoretical departures, so that the discipline will attract more attention in addressing the contemporary issues, global challenges, and local problems. And with ulterior motive is to improve the human condition, the quality of life, to mitigate the risk. So with these intentions, the Anthropological Association for Humankind has created the virtual platform called the International Institute of Anthropological Applications. And this is the first course, digital ethnography, that this institute is offering. So yeah, a series of lectures we are organizing. And interestingly, some international eminent anthropologists, they're also willing to offer lectures on this platform. And already we had one lecture from Netherlands. Walter Fage have delivered one lecture, how his experiences of taking the anthropological applications and insights to the corporate world, and how successful he was. and how the anthropology is getting popularized for the past 1 decade. What are the twists and turns, and what are the success stories? It was amazing lecture we had, and another lecture from Kansas University, and the professor Bartholomew C. Dean, and he's a director for public policy and social research, and also he's a professor of anthropology. So his specialization is public anthropology. So he also delivered a lecture, and where he shared his experiences in Amazonia, and how this the story of the tribals, and exposed of the things, kind of thing. So these interesting happenings, and I also look forward to organize lectures to create interest, and to generate momentum, and to finally help our participants to come up with their own interest research problems, and to investigate those things, and to conduct a digital ethnography on the digital field sites, and to come up with ethnographic writings and publications to tell our story to the world, how digital ethnography can make a difference in understanding human nature and human behavior, human cultures, and what exactly can we offer to the wider society to improve their living standards and quality of life. So with that intention, and with that motivation, we started this journey. And yeah, so I'm glad that you are here for this lecture, and I hope it will create some knowledge and insights for practical applications. Yeah, in that process, we have come up with a course outline, and for the on digital ethnography, and we have prescribed textbooks. One is Digital Ethnography Principles and Practices by Shara Pink and her colleagues, and another book is the Routledge Companion to Digital Ethnography. So these are the textbooks, and there are many others, and we are going to study those books, and pass on some important ideas to our participants, so that they will get clues how actually the decades of digital ethnographic research is creating knowledge, and generating energy and meaning for the contemporary society, using ethnographic techniques, digital platforms, and how the human lives can be observed, and research can be undertaken, and theoretical framework can be evolved. So in that context, yeah, presently we are studying the book, The Routledge Companion on Digital Ethnography. So I'm going to read some of the observations in this book that we get. So, yeah. So in the introduction of this book, Larissa Hijot and Heather Horst and Annie Galloway and Genevieve Bell, these are the editors of this book. So in their introduction, they write like this: as the digital becomes increasingly entwined within everyday life, the ethnography's value as a key methodological and analytical approach to understand the ways in which digital media technologies are changing how we live, work, and play has increased. Pink et al. 2016 and Hein 2015. Bringing together scholars from a variety of disciplines, including anthropology, sociology, media, communication, and cultural studies, the companion reflects upon and seeks to assess the past, present, and the future of digital ethnography. Through a series of key rubrics, debating digital ethnography, relationships, visibility and voice, place and co-presence, play, arts, infrastructures, politics, and design. The Routledge Companion to Digital Ethnography considers the interdisciplinary role of digital ethnography as we move into progressively more complex digital entanglements within the everyday. That in this editor's introduction, we outline, we see the outline, the 9 rubrics and the attendant 44 chapters that constitute the current state of digital ethnography research. I repeat, in this editor's introduction, the author's editors outline the 9 rubrics and the attendant 44 chapters that constitute the current state of digital ethnography research. They conclude by introducing 3 provocations for the future of digital ethnography. The companion begins with a section dedicated to debating digital ethnography that contextualizes contemporary debates about the consequences of digital media technologies for ethnographic practice from different disciplinary vantage points. The first chapter by anthropologists Mike Fortum and Kim Fortum and George E. Marcus provides a sharp anthropology and stems back to Clifford and Marcus, writing culture, and a seminal textbook a seminal text in defining the politics and practices of ethnography and fieldwork to contextualize new modes of ethnographic research, collaboration, and expression. Similarly, sociologist Christian Hein draws from a decade and a half of ethnographies focused on the internet to consider how digital media cultures have shaped ethnography as a practice. Reflecting upon the changes and the continuity within the academy, science and technology studies scholars Annie Bulu follows Hein with the discussion of how computationalization shapes some of the adaptations of ethnographic methods, a framework that ethnomuseologist Wendy F. Susu also explores through her discussion of performance. Husu further questions the purpose of writing as the predominant expression of ethnographic knowledge within the context of digital media. Debating digital ethnography continues with reflections by 2 contributors, Jenna Burrell and John Postel, who considers how the digital media technologies in our field sites and fieldwork represent continuity rather than rupture with the previous ethnographic practice. Burrell, for example, highlights how online practices make visible the notion of the field site as a network that is meaningfully constructed through the ethnographer's experience. Postel also argues for continuity, noting that ethnography has long involved studying at a distance, but digital media technologies make researching from a distance, doing remote ethnography easier. The section concludes with a chapter by Georgina Bourne and Christopher Howard, who reflect upon the meaning of digital ethnography itself. As they highlighted, digital ethnography has a double meaning. It refers to deploying the ethnographic to understand digital culture as it does apply to the use of digital methodologies increasingly within ethnographic research. The next section, relationships, focuses upon the different forms of sociality that are being mediated through digital media cultures, especially social media. It begins with a contribution by Tom MacDonald, Rezwan Nikolscu, and Jolina and Sinanan, who draw upon their participation on a large collaborative project of social media use in 9 field sites to reflect upon how social media is shaping and being shaped by small communities around the world. Moving from communities to families, Mirka Madino examines how Filipino transnational family practices are being transformed in the light of the ubiquitous presence of communication. What she calls polymedia environments. Luc Van Rijn and Tamara Kohn and Bjorn Nansen and Michael Arnold and Martin Gibbs consider how the practices around memorialization and death rituals are being altered and amplified by social media, with particular attention to how people continue to form relationships with the dead through social media profiles and pages that often persist after their death. The final chapter by Guillaume Dumont turns our attention to the possibilities of social media to move beyond kinship or place-based social ties to develop new relationships. Dumont illustrates how professional rock climbers use a variety of social media strategies, especially self-branding to cultivate their relations with fans, their sponsors, and other professional climbers. The third section, visibility and voice, attends to the potential and the limits of digital media technologies to transform who, when, and how people are seen and heard, and how digital media cultures may replicate or transform existing offline forms of inequality and participation. The chapter by Cara Williams, Wallis and Xi Ku turns our attention to the social media site Weibo in China and building upon Chaudhry's definition of voice. Wallis and Ku highlight the ways in which the Weibo both amplifies and silences voices in China and the implications of this for developing an online public sphere in China. Patricia G. Lang reconsiders the agency of YouTube video creators in a context where videos posted online are perceived as collective property that can be remixed or even deleted. These conditions complicate and in some cases counteract the agency and self-expression enabled through sites such as YouTube. Crystal Abedin's chapter, by contrast, chronicles how a small community of commercial lifestyles, micro celebrities engaged in self-branding in Singapore and used a range of social media to transform themselves from mere bloggers to influencers, using their visibility and voice for economic gain. The final chapter by Shiba Muhammad and Heather Horst on amateur musicians in Trinidad and Tobago suggests that while YouTube and other sites may assist with skills development and exposure to new audiences, many musicians still feel their voice and visibility is limited unless they migrate internationally. The fourth rubric, fourth part investigates the overlay place and co-presence. Co-presence has been a useful concept in the rise of online and mobile media to consider the various forms of presence whereby face-to-face is not taken as superior or unmediated. Rather, all forms of communication are mediated, if not by technology, then by gestures, memories, and emotions. Jordan Kramer's chapter considers the role of ethnography to reflect upon Jordan Kramer's chapter considers the role of ethnography to reflect upon culture, selfhood, and place through the emergent European transnationalism on social media in Berlin during the Jesuit Charlie hashtag campaign of 2015. Gadde chapter critically examines the culture and practices of a grassroots handmade version of the internet in suburban Australia, highlighting the value of these practices for helping to imagine new ways of developing the online and attendant forms of agency within everyday life. The following chapter by Christian Hein, Christian Licope and Julian Morrow turns our attention to the role of locative mobile media in the development of unplanned, fleeting encounters with pseudonymous strangers and virtual acquaintances in urban public places. A finding that builds upon yet also challenges Goffman's theory of frame analysis. The last two chapters of this section considers the role of mobile media in challenging notions of place. Ingrid Richardson and Brendan Keogh, for example, approach mobile media as an itinerant interface. I repeat, Ingrid Richardson and Brendan Keogh, for example, approach mobile media as an itinerant interface between ethnography and phenomenology that traverses and interweaves material, corporeal, network, online and offline contexts. The final chapter by Didim Ozekul attends to the critical role of mobile communication as the practice of place-making. Fifth rubric of the fifth section, play, focuses upon the intersection between the context and practices of play. Tom Epperly kindly mute your mic, please. Kindly mute your mic. Thank you. This fifth section or rubric, play, focuses upon the intersection between the context and practices of play. Tom Epperly's chapter begins with his examination of gaming as a localized cultural practice through the case study of Venezuelan cyber cave, in which he reflects upon how play can afford spaces for social inclusion in technologically constrained environments. Crystal Martin's chapter on World Wrestling Entertainment, WWF, and its fandom shifts this section to forms of play that often do not receive the attention of gaming scholars, yet represent some of the most popular forms of play globally. The next contribution by Emma Witkowski attends to the location-based running mobile app, Zombies Run, and the ways in which the app draws upon women's feelings of vulnerability in public space, building upon her phenomenological study of running, gender, and play. Witkowski argues that understanding these playful movements in public spaces can help to rethink the relationship between the body and locality. The final chapter by Israel Froese and Susanna Tosca examines children's practices in and around emergent mobile technologies, especially tablets, through a focus upon the role of children's hands. Together, the work by Witkowski, Froese, and Tosca combines phenomenological and digital ethnographic approaches to advance our understanding of play and the body. The companion, the Routledge companion to digital ethnography, then turns its attention to the interplay between digital ethnography and the arts. The chapter by Paulo Favaro reflects upon the ethnographer's role as increasingly like that of a curator exhibiting the ethnographic in a new open-ended modes that reflect the multimodal, nonlinear, relational, and metric engagements with the visual world that characterize the habits of contemporary art. Larissa Hijot, William Blamford, Sharon Greenfield, Luke Gaspard, and Amin Nassim, and Tom Penny's contribution explores the role of digital and non-digital play through a series of workshops with young people. The chapter considers how participatory design and art practice can inform ethnographic methods and vice versa, drawing upon long-term ethnographic research on digital photography. And Edgar Gomez Cruz explores what he terms the becoming of selfies, that is, the conditions and processes that configure the development of imagery as a central element in online practices. Marcia Berry looks at the emergence of mobile filmmaking with a particular attention to the ways in which smartphones are affording new types of curation and transmedia filmmaking. The final chapter of this section by Jennifer Degger returns to the theme of curation through a discussion of her collaborative work on mobile phones with the remote Aboriginal communities across North Australia. Degger posits an integration of visual and digital ethnographies that provoke and enable new forms of ethnographic poetics. The next section, infrastructures, considers the multiple dimensions and the roles of infrastructure, social, material, and immaterial, to name a few, in thinking through the politics and practice of digital ethnography. Building upon the previous sections, focus upon curation and the arts. Heidi Geismer interrogates the emergence and use of Instagram as a platform, software, and archive, taking an anthropological perspective on smartphone photography and social media. Taking an anthropological perspective on smartphone photography and social media, Gismer argues that a study of Instagram as archive should embed this technological practice and digital infrastructure in broader issues about the representation of culture and the culture of representation, the epistemologies of social media archives, and the form of collecting and exhibiting popular and personal photographs, both online and on mobile platforms. Alexandrine Fournier's work on digital music circulation in Cuba shifts our attention from platforms and software to use through an analysis of digital music technologies. Fournier argues that digital music technologies have enabled alternative networks to emerge to counteract the limits and restrictions on media circulation in contemporary Havana, and concludes the chapter with a reflection on the changes three music technologies have made the I repeat, Baudrillard Fournier argues that digital music technologies have enabled alternative networks to emerge to counteract the limits and restrictions on the media circulation on contemporary Havana, and concludes the chapter with a reflection on the changes these music technologies have made to the practice of digital ethnography. Hannah Knox's chapter takes an infrastructural approach to digital ethnography. In order to understand social change, drawing on her fieldwork on domestic energy use, Knox argues that an infrastructural approach enables insights into the interplay between the technical, the material, and the social. The next chapter by Stephen C. Rea and Ursula Dellinghast, Tyler C. Nelms, and Bill Moorer analyzes both the technical and social infrastructures for financial inclusion through mobile payments, comparing three financial inclusion efforts: Kenya's M-Shawari, Reserve Bank of India's payments banks, and the Central Bank Ecuador's mobile payment systems. Re et al. Demonstrate how mobile payment systems could ride the rails, unquote, of the other infrastructures. This section concludes with a chapter by Juan Francisco Salazar on polar infrastructures. As Salazar observes, quote, infrastructures are built networks that facilitate circulation of goods, people, and data and allow for their exchange over space, unquote. In Antarctica, there are multiple national infrastructures that underpin Antarctica's mobile telecommunications networks, whose operations require an understanding of the other infrastructures that shape life on Antarctica. The next section in the companion is focused upon politics. Sirpat Tenbuonen begins by reflecting upon the interplay between mobile phones in India and the long history of engagement in local politics in rural West Bengal, India, where she has been working for over a decade. The implications of new mobile telecommunications infrastructure for political engagement continue in Mirjam D. Brujin chapter on mediated political agency in contested regions of Africa, focusing on mobile social media. D. Brujin highlights how sharing opinions and dissent in ways not possible in public spaces in conflict areas of Central and South Africa, in Central and Southern Africa. Veronica Barassi then turns our focus to a series of 3 political groups in Europe to understand the complexities of activism through social media. In particular, Barassi draw attention to the tension between collective social movements through social media and the corporate entities that own the platforms and infrastructures for social media activism. The chapter by Heather Ford continues this thread through a focus on Wikipedia participants in Nairobi, Kenya. Specifically, Ford reflects upon the authoritative and seemingly inclusive force of Wikipedia, and that gets rejected and silenced by today's knowledge production machine. The final chapter of this section by Richard Beckwith and Ken Anderson explores the role of environmental sensing and control in the context of Portland, USA. Focused upon the ways in which different stakeholders emerge around access, use, and sharing, and ownership of sensor data. Beckwith and Anderson consider the productive tensions between civic engagement, participation, and the emergence of data citizens. The companion concludes with a section on design, especially the interaction between design and the future of ethnographic practice. Christo Sims begins with this with his chapter, quote, "The Politics of Design, Design as Politics," unquote. Through fieldwork on a recent design project, a new public school in New York City, the chapter proposes ethnography has much to learn from design, practice, and failure. The next chapter by Elise, let me repeat. Through fieldwork and Christo Sims begins this with his chapter, "The Politics of Design, Design as Politics." Through fieldwork on recent design project, a new public school in New York City, the chapter proposes ethnography has much to learn from design practice and failure. The next chapter by Elisandra Ardevol and Deborah Lanseni reflects upon their fieldwork with digital designers in Barcelona, Spain, arguing that ethnography is a process of knowledge not about the world as it is, but the universe that will learn with, others. The following 3 chapters explore the possibilities between design and ethnography through an exploration of 3 interventions that take a speculative approach to design. The first of these by Yoko Akama, Catherine Molini, and Shara Pink considers, quote, disruptive interventions with mobile media, unquote, through design plus ethnography plus futures. A research initiative to explore how a future orientation to research could invite new forms of change making. I repeat, the first of these by Yoko Akama, Catherine Molini, and Shara Pink considers, quote, disruptive interventions with mobile media, unquote, through design plus ethnography plus futures. A research initiative to explore how a future orientation to research could invite new forms of change making. The next chapter by Annie Galloway focuses upon the creation and aspirations of more than human lab, which seeks to explore sustainable possibilities for people to live with animals, plants, and the land. The final chapter by Elizabeth Chin poetically brings together the politics of design, especially the erasure of race, with a speculative turn by using wearables to examine inequality through design, enabling participants to reimagine what is and what can be. Collectively, the projects reflect upon the limits and possibilities of design for engaging social worlds. Let's see. Yeah, the final chapter by Elizabeth Chin particularly brings together the politics of design, especially the erasure of race, with the speculative turn by using wearables to examine inequality through design, enabling participants to reimagine what is and what can be. Collectively, the projects reflect upon the limits and possibilities of design for engaging social change. Provocations, the future of digital ethnography. As in any field defining endeavor, this companion does not and cannot include every domain or dimension of digital ethnography. Rather, it seeks to provide readers with positioned perspectives on key debates in and around digital ethnography as a field, frame, and set of methods. I repeat, as in any field defining endeavor, this companion does not and cannot include every domain or dimension of digital ethnography. Rather, it seeks to provide readers with positioned perspectives on key debates in and around digital ethnography as a field, frame, and set of methods. Over the 44 chapters that constitute this volume, the editors have identified 9 key rubrics that represent important interventions in this interdisciplinary field, ones that they view as moving the field forward in productive ways. In this concluding section, the editors briefly outline 3 areas that have emerged from this companion that they believe are fruitful directions for digital ethnography. The first one is interdisciplinary iterations. Throughout the chapters in the companion, many of the authors articulated the need to consider the ways in which ethnography and digital ethnography is shaping our methodological practices as well as the epistemological frameworks that we operate within. The first section of the companion, Debating Digital Ethnography, includes provocative chapters by Hine, Postel, and Hsu, as well as Bourne and Howard, that all directly address how the practice of ethnography is changing due to an engagement with the digital environments. However, many of the chapters in the art and design sections also draw our attention to the ways in which the interdisciplinary spaces through which we operate spur further thinking about the utility and usefulness of ethnography. We see this process in we see this process in Deger's collaboration and the curation of an exhibit that is now traveling globally, or in Favero's discussion of open modes of curation. We also gain insight into the new possibilities through Adewole and Lanzani's discussion of openness and ongoingness in their engagement with designers. The chapters by Hsu on performance and Chin on wearables and performance provoke ethnographers to use these technologies to explore possible futures and opening up new forms of engagement with the arenas such as quote, data, unquote. In effect, design and art can provide spaces for speculation and for creative, even playful explorations of ethnography as a series of changing approaches, theories, and probes. Continued commitment to these interdisciplinary conversations, I repeat, continued commitment to these interdisciplinary conversations is critical for the vibrancy of digital ethnography as a field and practice. Data ethnographies, while not designed into the original call for contributor papers to this companion, throughout the volume, there is evidence of an increasing engagement with the quote, data, unquote. Including different forms of so-called big data, quote unquote, with a few notable exceptions. I repeat, while not designed into the original call for contributor papers to this companion, throughout the volume, there is evidence of an increasing engagement with the data, including different forms of so-called big data, quote unquote, with a few notable exceptions. Example, Boyle-Storrs and Murer, 2015A, 2015B, and Norfos and Sheeman, 2014. Ethnographers have been somewhat reluctant to engage with this spate of research on big data. In part, this is due to an ongoing commitment to stay attuned to the everydayness of our engagement with digital media technologies. I repeat, with a few notable exceptions, ethnographers have been somewhat reluctant to engage with this spate of research on big data. In part, this is due to an ongoing commitment to stay attuned to the everydayness of our engagement with the digital media technologies. Data, big, better, small, rotten, or uncooked, is becoming part of the day-to-day life for many people around the world. Many researchers are exploring the limits of big data. Boyd and Crawford, 2012, Lipton, 2016. I repeat, in part, this is due to an ongoing commitment to stay attuned to the everydayness of our engagement with the digital media technologies. Data, big, better, small, rotten, or uncooked. Stoff and Morar, 2015A, 2015B, is becoming part of day-to-day life for many people around the world. See Beckwith and Anderson, this volume. And many researchers are exploring the limits of big data. Boyd and Crawford, 2012, Lipton, 2016. As well as deploying ethnography to understand big data as a type of storytelling that consists of the gaps, biases, and power relations. Watson and Nuffus, 2013. Indeed, at the Digital Ethnography Research Center, DRC, where two of the editors, Hijort and Host, work, a series of workshops was convened to focus upon, quote, data ethnography, unquote. Workshop participants have to date explore the emergence of data in everyday life through studies of self-tracking technologies. The shift to mobile data is small island developing states, the role of and playful media, the relationship between data and selfies, and a range of other topics. See Pink, Host, and Hijord, 2016 in preparation. We have also been, the editors also been interested in what it is like to live, feel, and imagine with the data. While engaging with big data analytics may be part of this discussion, an ethnographic approach to understanding data of whatever size or scale promises to yield new insights for our understanding of data and the practice of digital ethnography. I repeat, the editors of this book, the Routledge Companion to Digital Ethnography, have also been interested in what it is like to live, feel, and imagine with the data. While engaging with big data analytics may be part of this discussion, an ethnographic approach to understanding data of whatever size or scale promises to yield new insights for our understanding of data and the practice of digital ethnography. Making and theorizing change. Finally, it is clear that ethnography is not merely a useful tool to describe everyday practice. It is also playing a critical role in intervening in the world. Drawing from the empirical ethnography can provide insight into motivations and practices that in turn shape future directions for digital media. I repeat, finally, it is clear that ethnography is not merely a useful tool to describe everyday practice. It is also playing a critical role in intervening in the world. Drawing from the empirical Ethnography can provide insight into motivations and practices that in turn shape future directions for digital media. This is made most explicit in the chapters in the 3 sections on politics, infrastructures, and design. For example, Akama et al.'s Design Plus Ethnography Plus Futures initiative and Gallo's More Than Human Lab all seek forms of intervention in the world to enable and enhance change making. Hijot et al.'s exploration of the intervention between play, art, and design through workshops with young people considers how ethnography can enable reflection and change with the formal and informal contexts. Brassi's account of political groups in Europe also looks to the possibilities of social media for making change. Yet, these moves to shift ethnography and ethnographers towards the practice of intervention carefully hingers upon a sustained commitment to understanding the realities of digital media's shaping of the world and theorizing of social change more broadly. The focus upon the hidden infrastructures in Ray et al. The focus upon the hidden infrastructures in Ria et al.'s account of mobile money and financial inclusion efforts reinforces the need to understand the structural and regulatory environments that create conditions of use. Many of the chapters also interrogate the design and ownership structures of the corporations, such as Instagram, and in Ford's study of Wikipedians, the structures of participation that shape use. In the studies of the self-branding by Dumont and Abidin, in the studies of self-branding by Dumont and Abidin, and the studies of visual cultures and user agency by the likes of Barry and Cruz, we see how consumption and production practices are changing. Wallis CQ and D. Brizin's chapters highlight the seminal role of the state and state restrictions and prohibitions in making different platforms meaningful. Others account for changes and resistances to digital media across different cultural contexts, reinforcing the importance of attending to history and context. Digital ethnography will only be effective in as much as it makes a commitment to understanding, making, and theorizing change alongside the commitment to deep, thick readings of nuanced practices. I repeat, digital ethnography will only be effective in as much as it makes a commitment to understanding, making, and theorizing change alongside the commitment to deep, thick readings of nuanced practices. Meaningful interventions, even methodological interventions, must be situated within the broader social historical context. Research focused upon understanding how, when, and why change occurs also requires an openness to working with the knowledge. I repeat, Meaningful interventions, even methodological interventions, must be situated within the broader social and historical context. Research focused upon understanding how, when, and why change occurs also requires an openness to working with this knowledge and the collaboration and the collaborators with whom we engage in the world, online, in the academy, and in the world, to engage in change making, This productive tensions is key to digital ethnography's own future as a field. I repeat, research focused upon understanding how, when, and why change occurs also requires an openness to working with this knowledge and the collaborators with whom we engage in the world, online, in the academy, and in the world, to engage in change making. This productive tension is key to digital ethnography's own future as a field. Yeah, this is the introduction these editors has given to this book, the Routledge Companion to Digital Ethnography. And coming to this doing ethnography, digital ethnography, the one minute, excuse me. Yeah, Remote Ethnography, Studying Culture from Afar by John Postel. This is the 6th chapter of this book, Remote Ethnography, Studying Culture from Afar. Yes, so I want to read some the content from this chapter. This is very brief and very interesting. So, yeah. Remote Ethnography, Studying Culture from Afar by John Foster. Before I read this for you, and I want to focus on the introduction. For the entire companion, the Routledge Companion to Digital Ethnography, the introduction chapter, understanding what the editors has to say, their observations, their leadings, their insights, and their provocations, and all those things are the estimating the future and the pointing to the directions, research areas where the profitable, both to the discipline and to the practice of ethnography, particular digital ethnography. So that is a brilliant chapter written by these editors. The introduction they did excellently. Comprehensive understanding of the 44 chapters, bringing the threads and leads and connections and how this can make sense in the context of 44 chapters. That's why I have given more emphasis to the chapter, the introduction chapter, so so that we can really have, within less time span, we can have a wider understanding and grasp of things, and see what these 44 chapters has to say in a nutshell. So that's why I give much emphasis to this introduction written by the editors of the Routledge Companion to Digital Ethnography. Then coming to 6th chapter of this companion, Remote Ethnography, Studying a Culture from Afar, Jan Postel. Yeah, the author directly introduces the context. It was a tense event. I was sitting in a classroom at Goldsmiths College, University of London, near the front. The speaker was ex-Muslim and feminist author Miriam Namazi. She was here as a guest of the university's Atheist, Secularist, and Humanist Society, AHS, to speak about blasphemy and apostasy. The audience consisted at this point of some 25 souls, including a contingent of young Muslim women seated toward the back of the room. Normally, at a university lecture, one assumes the audience will be reasonably quiet and respectful. You would certainly not expect to have to contend with the hecklers bent on disrupting the session. But on this occasion, that was exactly what was in store for Namazi. After a brief introduction by a young and bespectacled AHS member, Namazi wondered out loud whether she should sit or stand, eventually choosing the latter. About 10 minutes into her talk, half a dozen young bearded men, presumably from the university's Islamic Society, entered the room and sat along the front row, a mere few feet away from the speaker. One of them began to laugh as Namazi related the recent murder of Bangladeshi bloggers critical of political Islamists. The speaker asked him whether he found it amusing that people were being quote, hacked to death, unquote. Shortly afterwards, another bearded student started to interrupt Namazi, to which she responded by shouting numerous times, quote, "Be quiet or get out," unquote. Alas, to no avail, tongue in cheek, the student replied that he felt intimidated by Namazi, who immediately retorted, "Oh, you are intimidated. Go to your safe space," unquote. Refusing to be silenced by the constant interruptions and irritations. Example, loud ringing tones. Namazi pressed on with her presentation and even managed to hold a Q&A session at the end, by which time the troublemakers had already left the room. I repeat, shortly afterwards, another bearded student started to interrupt Namazi, to which she responded by shouting numerous times, quote, "Be quiet or get out," unquote. Alas, to no avail, tongue in cheek, the student replied that he felt intimidated by Namazi, who immediately retorted, "Oh, you are intimidated? Go to your safe space," unquote. Quote, "Oh, you are intimidated? Go to your safe space," unquote. Refusing to be silenced by the constant interruptions and irritations. Example, loud ringing tones. Namazi pressed on with her presentation and even managed to hold a Q&A session at the end, by which time the troublemakers had already left the room. I folded my laptop, got up from the sofa, went downstairs, made myself a cup of tea. I had been glued to the screen for almost 2 hours without a break. I was not in London. I was at home in Melbourne. I was not in London. I was at home in Melbourne, 17,000 kilometers away. What's more, I was not even following the lecture in real time, for it had been recorded and uploaded onto YouTube the day before. I learned about this video via Twitter. And yet it felt as if I was present there and then in the thick of it, as much a member of the audience as anyone else. I felt the palpable tension, the anger, the fear, the dogged determination, and the final triumph of the argument over intimidation. Perhaps it did not feel exactly as I felt the palpable tension, the anger, the fear, the dogged determination, the final triumph of argument over intimidation. Perhaps it did not feel exactly as if I had been there at the time, but no leap of the imagination was needed to feel a great sense of immediacy, even intimacy, with a recorded event that took place a world away. A problem of legitimacy. This tale of entry was inspired by a draft article by Patty A. Gray, 2016, titled, quote, Memory, Body, and the Online Researcher, Following Russian Street Demonstrations via Social Media, unquote, published in American Ethnologist. I had the good fortune of being one of the paper's 6 reviewers. I say good fortune became this reviewing assignment coincided with the early preparations for the present chapter. This gave me an ideal entry point into the question of how we might go about doing ethnographic research remotely in the current age of nearly ubiquitous digital media. Gray opens her article with the following passage. It is a crisp winter day in Moscow, brilliant blue sky, bright sunlight, dazzling white snow, shoveled into piles along the streets. We are driving along the Garden Ring, the circular road that belts the city of Moscow. Normally on a Sunday, this road would be relevantly empty and quiet. Certainly not the traffic gridlock that paralyzes the city on any given weekday. But on this sunny Sunday in January, the road is full of Muscovite cars of all imaginable makes, circling the city, making one full turn of the Garden Ring, then another, round and round, as they are joined by more and more cars. It is easy to spot who you are looking for, because their white emblems are displayed as visibly as possible on their vehicles. Flowing white ribbons, white balloons, a white umbrella sticking through a sunroof, someone's white blouse fluttering out a window, a white stuffed rabbit strapped to a side view mirror. One car is tiled with pieces of white paper, and another has simply piled high its roof with the snow. This last example is the most literal emblem because this has been dubbed the snow revolution, quote, snow revolution, unquote, Russia's contribution to the so-called colored revolutions. Gray, 2016. Just like me, Gray is referring to an event that she only part in remotely, or in her case in real time. While I was quote, transported, unquote, from Melbourne to London, she was driven, unquote, around snowy Moscow from her Dublin home. Quote, I am not in Moscow, I am in Dublin, but it felt like I was in Moscow and I want to go back, unquote. Although a long-time specialist in Russia, Gray did not set out to conduct research into Russian protests remotely. Indeed, at all. I repeat, although a long-time specialist in Russia, Gray did not set out to conduct research into the Russian protest remotely, or indeed at all, yet once she had followed the first protest, she became quote, hooked, unquote, for months on end, joining the action as it played out, quote, from the start to finish, spending hours at each sitting, unquote. She describes the experience as being, quote, exhilarating and often great fun, unquote, albeit as exhausting as traditional anthropological fieldwork. At the same time, this protracted activity raised the thorny issue of whether it could be considered, quote, real, unquote, fieldwork. I repeat, at the same time, this protracted activity raised the thorny issue of whether it could be considered real fieldwork, given the absence of being there, quote and unquote, being there, Gadde, 1988, dimension. The aim of Gray's article is to explore the meaning of being there and being then. I repeat, the aim of Gray's article is to explore the meaning of, quote, being there, unquote, and, quote, being then, unquote, and especially the use of social media, quote, to remotely study offline social phenomena, unquote. She suggests that ethnographers experience and remember online social media encounters just as they do offline encounters, that is, quote, in the body, unquote. If this is the case, says Gray, the epistemological implications are significant for all ethnographers, including those like her with no particular interest in studying digital media. In this chapter, I wish to continue the conversation, so to speak, with Patty Gray on this problem of how to go about studying local phenomena from afar. I repeat, in this chapter, in this chapter, John Postel wished to continue to conversation so that to speak with Patty Gray on this problem of how to go about studying local phenomena from afar. To this end, John Postel will take a take up a number of the points advanced by Gray and discuss them one by one, sitting with the idea of remote fieldwork as a safer way of conducting research in conflict-ridden and otherwise hazardous locations. I repeat, to this end, the author John Postel suggests, feels, he says, to this end, I will take up a number of the points advanced by Gray and discuss them one by one, starting with the idea of remote fieldwork as a safer way of conducting research in conflict-ridden or otherwise hazardous locations. From a safe distance, that is the title he gives. John Postel, the author of this article, he gives the safe distance, from a safe distance. One unexpected bonus of doing remote research for Gray was that as a US citizen, doing fieldwork on the ground in Russia entails a degree of potential risk and harassment. I repeat, one unexpected bonus of doing a remote research for Gray was that as a US citizen, doing fieldwork on the ground in Russia entails a degree of potential risk and harassment. Even if I had been free to jump on a plane at the first sign of activity and spend the next several weeks in Moscow researching this phenomenon firsthand, it would have been risky for me to do so as an American citizen. I am a lightning rod for a negative attention from Russian authorities. There is a venerable precedent here. There is a venerable precedent here. It is